episode 9 within a 48-hour period at the Detroit Motor City Tattoo Expo. We get to sit down with one of the promoters, one of the, I want to say, pioneers, pillars in the industry. I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico, so I've always respectfully called Brian Everett our godfather in the Albuquerque tattoo scene, owner of Route 66, pioneer trailblazer in the Southwest. We had the opportunity to catch this man on a Sunday afternoon. Everyone, if you're watching this, I would like to welcome Brian Everett. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Hey, I appreciate the prompts. You guys will both get your checks here in the mail,
Shh.
That's another thing we got to cut out.
Yeah, edit that, buddy.
No, I do. I appreciate it. It's been an amazing career, and I've met a lot of amazing people. I've gotten to travel the world. Been to almost every country in Europe, China, Russia. It's opened up many doors. Obviously, being involved in a show like this, being involved with the Tattoo Fiesta in Albuquerque, and I don't know. It's just I managed to raise 6 children with a decent standard of living. I got 11 grandchildren, and been married to the same woman 40 years now. We're going on 40. We're almost right there.
What's your anniversary?
Don't even
put on the spot.
No, it's kind of weird because I got 2. I have one in September because we just went and got married, and then we did it in the church several years later, and we did that on Easter. So Easter's easy. It's like Easter's my anniversary, dog. My wife takes care of that whole department of dates. Like my own children, I literally do not know their birthdays for the most part without her reminding me that it's coming up. So
see, mine did it right because she said we're gonna do July 18th, 2019. So it's 7/18/19.
Yeah,
like, I can remember that.
See, that's good. That's good.
Well, I think there's something really important that I personally feel I need to point out right now. When I started tattooing, I was shortly after I got married, and my mentor actually made the statement that I was stupid for getting married because nobody in the tattoo industry stays married. Everybody gets divorced.
Yeah.
The fact that you've been married for going on 40 years, as somebody who's newly remarried because I got divorced, I want to know what your secret is.
You want me to tell you?
Yeah.
Please.
Because when you have 6 kids, you can't afford to get divorced. I mean, we went through our highs and lows, and most couples do. And I actually, at one point, I watched a documentary about military men that came back from deployment and came into their house, and their family had to live without them for extended periods of time. So because they weren't involved in the process, when they got home, they were like company in their own house. And, a man thinks, a house is his castle, his domain. And then you're really kind of like, you're in the way, And I watched that and I was like, wow, that's me. That's what I'm feeling. I'm feeling like this isn't mine, And so I attempted to kind of make some adjustments in how what the perspective, why the dynamics were the way they were. And I talked it over with my wife, and she said, well, I'm sorry if you feel like that. And I said, well, I'm sorry if I've created the situation such that you guys feel like that. So, me and my wife, it's weird because now all my kids are grown up. They're out of the house, and now we've had to come back together. And
yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and we have a house in Havasu, so in the winter we run to Havasu and stay in the 70-degree weather.
Nice.
And then we come back to New Mexico because I'll always be a New Mexican. I love New Mexico. So then we come back there and spend the summers in New Mexico, and it's we get to have each other now. It's good.
It's beautiful. And I know you have, what, 2 of your children are tattooers?
Just one.
Just one. Okay.
And he's here.
Okay.
And he's quite successful. He's you know, and he kind of, it's kind of a trip because I kind of lined it up with Tony Olivas to do an apprenticeship with him. And Tony was completely in on it. He said, yeah, man, you let me know. And Danny was going to school up in Portland taking art classes. And so I said, we're not going to tell Danny, you know, because I don't want him to drop out of school to do this. I want him to finish. So Tony says, okay, we'll keep it on the hush. Well, by the time he got out of school, he had already lined it up with Pablo and Clown, you know, and the Beat to work over at the Beast. And it was weird because, you know, I'd come here and I'd see my kid, you know, running for food and, you know, setting up and breaking down their stuff. And, you know, he worked for his spot, you know, and, you know, now he's, you know, done like that, niched his way in and he's doing it. He's doing beautiful tattoos. I mean, I've helped him all the way through it too. You know, he comes to me for mentorship, but you know, he really did do it on his own, and I'm proud of that. So
it's good to recognize that work. I know, like,
yeah.
just, you know, we're all sons of somebody, right? And you know, we could think about our fathers. Ben and I were talking about our fathers earlier, and you know, there's something that you want your dad to see, that I can do this. I'm a man now. I can muscle through it, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's good that you can recognize that. So hopefully he gets to watch this and hear you talk good like that.
It's kind of weird though, going to work and all of a sudden you go to work and your kid's there. You know what I mean? You don't expect that. Right?
I told my 15-year-old that when she turns 16 and gets a car, I'm going to pay her $100 a month, and she needs to come to the shop every Monday and clean.
Yeah.
So she told me no.
No, yeah, well, you can get that.
I said, well, now we're not getting a car.
Yeah, there is a certain age where everything you tell your kid is a suggestion, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's right after 12, to tell you the truth.
Well, she didn't. I take it back. She didn't actually say no. She looked at me and said, "Bruh," which I took as no.
That's
but
the no, yeah.
That was probably a fair assessment.
Well, it's what Jeremy's saying is amazing, you know, Brian, because you would think somebody coming from a successful tattoo artist who's had a long-standing career could just walk right into it, but he at least recognized the value in stepping in, like you just made that motion, like fought his way into the industry and is now earning his keep.
And he picked out who he admired, right?
Yeah,
who he wanted to follow. There he goes, right there.
Oh,
Speak of the devil.
Yeah, he looked like he's busy ready to work.
At one point, I told him, I says, you know, son, sure seems like you're like, you know, working my coattails pretty hard there. And he looked at me, started laughing. He goes, it's so cool, Dad. He goes, they introduced me as your son. I don't have to say anything. I was like, you little shit, you know.
Well, well, you're just through just being around you, he obviously saw what we went through, or what you went through. I mean, with the age of tattooing and the way that we were brought up in the earlier years, you know, and we started off saying trailblazer and pioneer. You know, I'd love for, you know, any who don't know, which is going to be rare, that don't know the kind of the origin for Brian Everett in Albuquerque and Route 66, and how that kind of, you carved that path and how it got you to where you are right now.
Well, when I very first, you know, I always had a passion for tattoos. When I was a kid at the flea market and stuff, you know, the guy that's working, he'd have like tattoos from probably Long Beach, you know, traditional tattoos. And I always I'd check them out and like, wow, that's cool, you know. And I remember my dad always said, you know, son, I was in the Air Force for 4 years and I never got a tattoo. And I always thought, wow, that's lame. You know what I mean? I wouldn't say that to him because I get smacked, but you know, he was trying to, you know, show me how bright he was that he never did it, because I always thought that's probably the first thing I'll do. And the first professional shop I ever went in, I got a tattoo. As it was, there was a girl named, it was funny because somebody was teasing me about being a male chauvinistic pig because I said some sort of, you know, snide remark. And I said, are you kidding me? I said, my first tattoo was from a woman. And they said, you're full of shit. And I said, no, I swear. Her name was Shelley Lawson. She tattooed in Tucson, Arizona. And I was drilling turquoise. That's when turquoise was a big thing back then. And I went in there, and being the intelligent guy I was at that age, I got the Anheuser-Busch Eagle right here, and she did a real nice job on it and stuff. And later I got it covered up because I quit drinking, which was the only real smart move I ever made that was as smart as marrying my wife was that I quit drinking. And had I not quit drinking, I would have screwed up that. But um, Shelley actually, like years later, she didn't know that she did my first tattoo, and she like was kind of hanging around Jack's room. Jack used to tattoo out of the hotel room like early on in the 70s, and she didn't know that she did my first tattoo. And I told her, I said, you did my first tattoo. And she goes, what are you talking about? Because she was kind of enamored that I was sitting there talking to her at that point, because my career, I'd kind of built it up a bit. And then she goes, well, let me see it. I said, well, you can't. It's gone now. You know what I mean? But I originally, when I very first got equipment, there was a guy named Speedy Gonzalez. Have you heard of Speedy Gonzalez? Yeah, well, he was an old heroin addict. That he was, and he made tattoo equipment, and that white nylon material. He would cut it with a jigsaw, and he would cut the upright, and then and he'd build his frame out of that and drill it out, and then he would take a copper tubing from the hardware store and make a tube, and he'd cut it and do everything to make a liner and a shader, and then he'd take the old douchebag tube and cut off a piece of it and make the handle for it. And my first machine had always through my career was on the shelf behind me to keep me humble for where my roots came from. Yeah. You know what I mean? And at one point, Speedy had a sidekick, and his name was Hawkeye. And Hawkeye actually years later was tattooing up on North 14. Years later, he came back. But Hawkeye, I went up there to get some more ink, and I was just tattooing friends. And at one point, Hawkeye said, "You really want to do this, don't you?" And I said, "This is how I'm going to make my living." And he said, "You're wasting your time with Speedy." And he said, I'm going to turn you on to a little something here." And he gave me National's card. And he said, I'm going to call him at National and tell him that you deserve to get equipment, And I'd showed him some pictures of some things I'd done. And obviously my art ability was such that I was able to figure it out pretty quick. And so then I started dealing with National, and I went to my very first tattoo convention up in Denver in '79, and Jack tattooed my first wife's name on my chest. And then that marriage lasted about 2 years. We didn't have 6 kids. It was easy out. So, but she did hang around a bit longer because she did know how to make needle bars. And at that point, I hated doing that. So,
people won't even know what that is right now.
Yeah, that's when you had to solder your needles on the end of the bar. And so after that, and I married Paula, who is my present wife, she would always lay on my chest right there, and Crystal's name was there. And she said, "I wish you would cover that damn thing up." So I said, "Okay, I will." So I ended up a trucker buddy of mine in it was, I think, 81 or 82. It was the same year the Queen Mary did their first tattoo show. And he was going into LA with a load, and I said, "Hey, can I catch a ride with you? I want to go get tattooed by this guy Jack Rudy that did this. I want him to cover it up." And he said, "Yeah, sure." So we got there. I hooked up with Jack, and I said, "Just cover it up." He goes, how about a cool little Mexican girl or something?" I said, "Yeah, that'd be fucking perfect, you know." And so he tattooed this beautiful girl right over it. And I came home, and my wife says, "Let's see." And I pulled up my shirt, and she goes, "You covered that bitch's name up with her face?"
Oh God.
I said, "There ain't no pleasing nobody around here, you know." So that's that's how that went down. But after that, after he did this cover up. After that, and then he did this one, and I was getting these tattoos from Jack so that I could watch everything he did while he was tattooing me. I could watch the whole process from start to finish. This one is actually in the video with the little gingerbread house, Good Time Charlie's original shop, because it was done there. And so this one is in that little video. But it gave me an opportunity. Jack felt like if I was getting all this work done, that I had the right to ask whatever questions I had. If I was smart enough to ask the right questions. And we spent enough hours together that we became friends. And then we both had an interest in cars. And so I told him, "Hey, if you're ever going down 40, I live 2 miles off of I-40. I said, drop in and come see me." Well, he did. And it was kind of funny because at the time we just had I was living in a mobile home, but I had 5 acres of land. And he showed up. Well, Jack, he's into aliens. You probably might have heard that. And so, being in LA, you don't never see the stars because of all the light pollution and stuff. And you know how it is up in the mountains where we're at. I mean, yeah, you look up and you see all the different star figurations. And my wife made dinner, and Jack was sitting out on the front porch, and he's just, "Holmes, look at this, man." I go, "Yeah, I know. I see it all the time, Dinner's ready, and, and he wouldn't come in the house, And finally I said, "Hey, I'm going to go eat. You can stay out here if you want." He finally came in and ate. But after that was when we started it's weird because my mom had a 49 Cadillac Coupe de Ville, and or a Sedanette, I'm sorry. And I had bought it, and she bought it from me. And then all of a sudden I wanted to buy it back. I forget, I think I sold it to her for $500. And so then Jack says, "Man, can you get that Cadillac?" And I said, "Well, my mom's got it, but I could give it a go." And so she charged me $1,800 to buy it back, And so I chopped it. And then me and Jack started doing car shows. And then we started doing the tattoo conventions. And I remember the first one that I hadn't been around National in years. And they had one down in Florida. And it was in this great big huge room. And there was just, at that time, National probably only had maybe 50 booths. And it was 50 booths in the corner of this huge room. It was weird, and people want a full room or they think there's nothing good there, So we didn't have a real good attendance. But Winona was working my flash. I had my flash for sale. I'd done this flash, and it was I debuted it there. And Winona is pitching my flash to this guy. I almost bought a set myself. It sounded so good, man. It was so that was kind of the beginning. We started traveling. And after that, the rest is history. We started going to a lot of shows. And then at a certain point, when my tattooing had elevated to the point to where I was real in demand for doing portraits. And at a certain point, I had to say to Jack, I said, you know, Holmes, I said, you're the only one that was ever doing portraits, and now I'm doing these portraits. Am I kind of stepping on you, you know? He goes, Holmes, I get sick of doing portraits. He goes, you do all the portraits you want, man. I like doing more graphic stuff. It gives me a break. Don't even think about it. I said, all right, good, you know? And so, you know, because I love doing them. I love doing them on paper. I love tattooing them. And so that kind of became my gig. And then at a certain point, people would hit me up to come to their shows, and they'd up the ante. You know, it's like, oh, we'll give you a booth, and it's, well, you know, kick it around. Like, we'll give you a booth, we'll give you a room. I said, oh, that sounds good. I said, well, you know, I got a partner. Yeah, who? Jack Rudy. Give him a booth and a room? Hell yeah! I was like, cool. So we kind of started double bill, and I was kind of the manager because Jack, you know, he kind of goes through life, you know, he doesn't, you know, and I'm picking up that, you know, we don't have to do it the way we're doing it, you know, and so we kind of started doing shows, did them all over Europe. You know, we most of the traveling I did with Jack. We kind of, you know, so it just evolved, you know.
We've talked a lot just throughout the weekend and even with other people we've interviewed about the idea of our industry is built on building relationships, not what, modern day makes you think of our industry is built on TikTok and Instagram. So, and what I'm hearing from you is you came in as a client, you and Jack built this relationship, and then now you've got kind of a partner in crime when it comes. We're going to be able to travel together, support each other in this way, build each other up artistically. And you've got somebody when you get those hard trips where, you know, you want to be home, but you've got somebody right there next to you that you do care about.
Yeah.
He is your friend. You know him, he knows you, and he can kind of help you get through that.
Yeah.
I think, you know, we've talked a lot about also advice for younger tattooers. I think that's a critical one. You know, find your tribe.
Yeah, that's true. When you got relationships, and then it became it was a whole bunch of us at that time. The business was much smaller, and we had a whole circle of us that were doing all the shows. And so, like, we were at the end of the show or the end of the evening, we'd all take off and go to dinner together, all of us, you know, and so we had a pretty tight knit group that went everywhere. Kind of the same group they became a part of your life, you know.
When did you open up Route 66? Fine Line.
I originally opened up a shop in the back of Donnie Vetter's motorcycle shop because he had a double shop that had an office in the front, and then it had the garage in the back, and then he got the building behind him, so he had additional space, and he had another office that he didn't use at all. And it had bathroom facilities and everything there. And so I rented that off of it. And just in the motorcycle world, because I was riding then, and you know, I had the shop down on 4th Street for years before that. But then I broke off for a few years. That I was working construction for a little while. And so then when I came back in, I set up at that shop, and I was there for, I don't know, 2 months. And one of the other tattooers, the city tried to shut him down, and he like snitched me out. And so they came over, and they said, you know, you can't tattoo here. And the zoning for this place was like for industrial. You know, it was like, you know, I mean, you could do everything there, you know. And so they said, to comply, you need to be in a C2 zone. And I said, well, give me the paperwork. And they gave me all the paperwork. And They walked out, and I got a big old smile on my face because I was in no contract with Donnie. He was doing me a favor. And I said, I guess I'm going to go find me a building in a C2 zone. So I went right over on Central, found the perfect building. I've been there, let me think now, 37 years, you know? And I went and found that building, and they showed up again. And they said, hey, it's illegal to tattoo in Albuquerque. And I said, look, I said, I have the paperwork here that you told me to comply with the city of Albuquerque. I needed to be in a C2 zone. I have complied. I'm in a C2 zone. I said, from here on out, you take it up with my attorney. And they acknowledged it, and they walked out. I didn't hear anything from them for about 10 years. And everybody thought that I had some inside connection because everybody that would go down to get a license, they told them that's illegal in Albuquerque. And so nobody knew what to do. So they thought for sure that I had something on somebody, or, there was some big trick to it. And I kept my mouth shut. I didn't let them think whatever.
That's why we said the Godfather of tattoo.
People thought there was something up, but eventually they kind of just opened up, and the city had to contend with it. And so Renee Sachs actually called me up, and the city somebody had tattooed out of the back of a t-shirt shop and tattooed her granddaughter. And she worked for one of the state reps. And so it caused a big stink, and we got called into this little office, and they were quite concerned about, it's illegal and this and that. And I told them my story, and they said, well, hold on, we got somebody that's supposed to already be here, and it was their city attorney. And so he came in, and he sat down in the meeting, and he said, I've looked everything over, and he said, this law that was put in place at that time, it was never legal, and we have no leg to stand on here, so, that's all I can tell you. You can try to take it to court, but we don't have a legal leg to stand on. And I'm like, yes, And so then on his way out the room, he said, oh, by the way, I get my tattoos at Route 66 Fine Line. Yeah. So that's what opened the door. And then after that, eventually, on a state level, I guess the city of Albuquerque hired a state epidemiologist. And so myself and Noah Bangkok worked with him directly. A lot of the other artists were involved in stuff. And I put together a guild, and everybody in Albuquerque stood up to the plate. Everybody showed up. And I said, look, we're going to have this city council. We're going in front of the city council on this issue. And I said, so everybody, you have to come. Excuse me. I said, you're going to have to come in your Sunday best. I said, you can't just,
Can't come in like a script.
Right. And I tripped out because everybody showed up looking sharp, man. The guys with the neck tattoos had on turtlenecks, and we had a full house, and nobody expected that. You know what I mean? Like, there was probably somebody in the neighborhood that was causing some sort of an issue or something that didn't like it there. I don't know. But at any rate, the city unanimously decided that it was okay to tattoo in the city of Albuquerque.
Prime example of an incident where our industry came together.
Yeah.
Right, where you've got tattooers that come together for the collective interest. And like right now, we've got all this stuff with Mokra happening. We're sitting in the APT booth because we're trying to get the industry to come together again. And for me personally, I see you as being pivotal in that, because this convention is what, 28 years now?
Yeah.
This is a place where I've been here 15 years. This is my 15th. Every single time I feel a camaraderie here.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a place where tattooers come together to collectively grow and make our industry better.
Yeah.
Right. So, where do you see yourself? And I know that I've seen you a lot with this Mokra stuff, but tell us about your role in helping it right now.
Well, it's kind of weird, because if somebody told me that I was going to be a chair in APTO and working on regulation with the FDA, I'd tell them they're out of their mind. You know what I mean? It wasn't something that I expected, and it just kind of I got nominated. You know what I mean? And it was like, through my business with Terry, I mean, I watched him build Eternal, from what the very early beginnings to what it's become. And I watched, everything that he's done, and tried to help at whatever point that I could help. And eventually, I ended up getting involved with Nexus, and then it became, they needed someone to represent manufacturing, and fortunately I had met Brian Eder through Terry, and when they were looking for someone, I raised my hand, and I wasn't sure what I was getting into. And I remember once I was nominated to be chair, I texted Brian Eder and I said, I am now a co-chair in AFTO. And he wrote back, oh, that's great. And I said, you think so? I hope so. You know what I mean? I was pretty apprehensive, because I'd done some work just with those guys in regulation during that part of it. And we were real fortunate. The epidemiologist we worked with he was like, he took it on with a passion. He had a tattoo from, what do you call it in the Middle East? Not Middle East. The big pieces where they take the coconut and they.
Oh, like the boring?
Yeah.
Or tattoo?
Yeah, yeah. Where the actual word tattoo came from was the tapping sound that they would make. He actually had a tattoo done like that. They spit in the coconut, they burn the coconut and spit in it, mix it. So, I mean, he like knew what the whole thing was about. He knew his history. He took it on with a passion. So it wasn't a real hard work for me when I was working with him to make things happen. And it wasn't a hard work because our guys that were tattooing in Albuquerque all jumped on board in the guild. And so, but this was a different thing. It was different level stuff. And I still sometimes I feel pretty out of my wheelhouse, you know what I mean? And because at one point they were talking about, when I came on, I said, look, I have a willingness to come on. I said, I don't want to do any administrative work because that's not I said, I'm an artist. And I said, the tattoo industry respects and trusts me. And I said, but, I want to come on representing more than anything else. And so Laurel said, well, what? The chair for AFTO said, well, what do you want as your title? And I said, consultant. You know what I mean? It made it easy because it's like, that's all I'm really doing is consulting what we think, I have my pulse on what the tattoo industry is, what the manufacturing is, because I watched all the way through it. And so,
So, you've culminated a story for us, Brian, because from starting before tattooing was really even legal, right? In certain places, having humble beginnings from getting your equipment made by somebody who is like you just mentioned. I mean, addicted to heroin, right? And then eventually finding your way into a very pivotal foundation organization, the National, to get your equipment, which then started your path with Jack, traveling the world, opening Route 6, Fine Line, being heavily involved, being that trailblazer, that pioneer who was standing up saying, well, the godfather of Albuquerque, because you had the only tattoo shop, you were able to stand up to them, say, I'm going to have my shop and this is what's up. And when they asked you, you showed up, you rallied the community to come together to stand up for that. It's through those efforts, that energy that you've, been able to team up with Tramp, team up with Bell and Hazel, and get involved with the New Mexico Tattoo Fiesta. You're now have been for quite a while the co-chair of the Association of Food and Drug Officials Body Art Committee, consulting them, giving them the information that they need to make the appropriate decisions. And then today, you actually had you were a part of a ceremony where you got to be involved with a very pivotal, foundational change to the industry in a positive way, and it's on the coattails of a lot of changes federal, and we have a unique unicorn right to your right, a tattoo artist who's also with accreditations, ISO. I didn't want to mess up your titles, brother. Yeah, but it's all this work you've been doing has allowed these things to happen. So please just kind of share what happened today and what that means.
Absolutely. So as we've talked about so many times, the new MOCRA law being in effect has kind of brought manufacturing for tattoo equipment, ink, tools, whatever it might be, just tattoo products, brought standards that are used in other industries into our industry. And that threatens our products and our industry, because if we don't find a way to use these standards to our benefit, then it could really take away our products. So in working with you, working with Ben and AFTO and APT, kind of this partnership has connected us with manufacturers to help those manufacturers understand the new regulations, understand what those standards and certifications are going to be. And today, we were able to present to Eternal, and you were there with us, a compliance certificate for ISO 22716, which is considered good manufacturing processes in the production and manufacturing of cosmetic products. So this is a worldwide recognized standard, and Eternal Inc. is the only tattoo ink manufacturer that is now certified to this. So huge leaps forward, and making this company that really, I have some respect for all these different manufacturers, but being a person who has loyally used Eternal for 20 years, really makes me just proud to say that this company and everybody involved is ahead of the game. And now when the FDA comes to call in, and the government's saying, yeah, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, we get to say, no, we've already done that. We've got it in place.
we're there.
So, yeah.
I was tickled. This guy, although I had met him before when we were in Northport at the convention, we're sitting there having lunch, and he goes, see that big ship there? And there's a big naval ship there. And I go, yeah. And he goes, I'm going to audit it tomorrow. I go, you what? I was just looking at it, and I was like,
it was cool. I went to the belly of the ship. It was great.
I mean, I'd already heard his credentials, and they were quite impressive. But just sitting there looking at that huge ship, and he goes, I'm going to audit it tomorrow. I was like, wow, that's cool. It's cool to have you on the team, Holmes.
I'm happy to be here.
I mean, that's the evolution in your career. Starting off with Speedy Gonzalez, going from homemade, God knows what, to now being certified, world-renowned certified products, right?
Yeah.
Getting to engage with, and let's not forget, Jeremy's obviously a veteran tattoo artist as well.
Well, sitting next to Brian, I feel like a rookie though.
Well, sure, yeah, definitely.
I'm on my downstroke, man.
Well,
my kid made it easy for me. It's like he's kind of carrying on the legacy, and I get to your eyes. I turned 69 this year, and it's like
nice.
It's like that the type of tattooing I was doing was very demanding, And it became to the point I'm like, you know, you get to a certain point, it's kind of, okay, I'll compare it. I also quite an avid skier, and I skied black diamonds all my life.
Wow.
And there was a point where black diamonds were like getting kind of rough, you know what I mean? And so
Hurts a little
I'd
more.
still ski the moguls, but I'd stay away from the black diamonds. And then you start looking at the groomers like those don't look so bad. So when you have to you're having to degress. It's like maybe this is a good time to tip your hat and say goodnight, you know? And so at this point, my new passion is metal engraving. I use a microscope while I'm doing it. I have 20/20 vision through a microscope, and it's a new passion, and it's very humbling because, you know, you think you're going to walk in there, you know, I've done what I've done in tattooing, so I'm just going to master this. And that doesn't happen. You got to go through the whole learning curve, and you have your master engravers. And when you go up and introduce yourself humbly, they'll throw you some crumbs, and you better write it down, you know, so that you can use them when you get home. So it's the process kind of all over
It's
again.
like starting over.
But it's great. You know, my wife, I was talking about buying some equipment, and I said, I can't afford to do that. She said, this is your new career. And I sat there and I looked, and I kind of thought about it, and then I looked at her, I go, kind of is, huh? And she goes, sure it is. Don't worry about it. Do it. I was like,
That's awesome.
Yeah, well,
that's why she's been my wife for 39 years.
I'm from Houston, and so I didn't wear my cowboy hat and my boots today, but being a native Houstonian, I have a cowboy hat and boots. I think I'm going to need a belt buckle engraved, Brian.
There you go.
I need one.
Hey, it'd be an honor.
That's awesome.
We're working our way there. It's just like tattooing. You want to start running before you got a good walk down.
Yep.
You know, so I'm trying. I had one of the master engravers give me some sound advice, and he said, and he didn't have Instagram, so he doesn't know that I posted a couple of rough stuff out there, right? But he said, yeah, one thing you don't want to do is you don't want the public to see what you're doing until you really are confident that you're where you need to be. And I went, okay, you know, and I walked away thinking, well, I already screwed that up, but I haven't posted anything since because I'm going to take his advice.
Yeah.
And when you see me posting some stuff, hopefully, it's not going to be as good as you know. I can never in my lifetime get as good as some of these guys are, but I can get good enough that I like what I'm doing. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And, you know,
more sage advice for the young tattooers.
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Because if you love what you're doing, you won't work a day of your life.
That's the truth.
Cool. Very cool. I love it. Well, we already had kind of shared like so many bits of wisdom in this interview. I think something to truly take is that, you know, hard work, dedication pays off, but it's never done, right? Once you finish one chapter, you're starting a new chapter. So we'll definitely keep an eye out for when we can get some of your new buckles and check out that new process.
I want to thank both of you guys for your involvement in all this. I mean,
Sure.
Without you, I don't know, we'd be in trouble. And you've come quite a way, Ben. You really have. And I'm proud that you're from the Burkade, doing the moves. So you know what I mean.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes,
okay,
thank you,
guys.
Brian. We appreciate everything you have done for us, sir.
Yeah, thank you for paving the way.